Okay, so welcome to our data and performance management meeting for December 2020, our first in a long while. Can everyone please put their agency name in the chat so we have record of who is participating? We do have a short agenda today, so we may end early. We wanted to talk to you about cascading enrollment and assessment data in HMIS, and then go over the transitional housing project performance reports. And we do have a new format for these that we're trying to incorporate moving forward, so it'd be great to get your feedback on those also. So for those of you who are newer to this meeting, we do try to have some discussion during this meeting. It's not meant to just be me talking at you. We would like to get your feedback on some things. So if you haven't already, if you can call in or in some way be able to talk at certain points during the meeting, that would be great. Or if you can't, if you could put comments in the chat as we go along, that would be helpful also. So cascading enrollment and assessment data. So let me pull up HMIS. All right, so in HMIS, we have the ability to cascade enrollment and assessment data across different agencies. And what this does is that it allows you, if a client already has an enrollment or assessment in HMIS and then they show up at another agency, the data from that previous enrollment or assessment can automatically transfer over to the new enrollment or assessment. And the purpose of this is to decrease your data entry burdens, so then your staff can just go through the data that's already in there and make sure it's correct rather than having to do complete data entry. And our current client consent form does allow for this, but we wanted to get your feedback on whether or not this is something that you would like to move forward with. And so I wanted to show you what that would look like if we did move forward. So this is the training agency. This is all fake data. And I am logged in under the OC training agency. And for this client, you can see that he has 2 enrollments, one at Aaron's agency and one at CityNet. So the CityNet enrollment reflects the current status of what you can see in HMIS now. So you can only see the name of the project that the client is enrolled in or was enrolled in, as well as the agency, and then the start and end dates. Under this new functionality, which you can see for Aaron's agency, you will see that same information, but there's also this I here. And if you click on this, you will be able to see the specific responses to the fields for that enrollment. But if you scroll down, there's no save button here, so you can't edit it in any way. It's just giving you the ability to view. And it's the same thing for assessments, although they don't have any assessments on here. You would not be able to see notes. It's really just the enrollment and assessment data. And to show you what the benefit of this is, I'm going to enroll this same client into a program under my agency. So I'll do the Permanent Supportive Housing Project. And when I go to enroll him, you can see all this data is already populated. And then if there's fields on this new enrollment that were not previously collected, then obviously you would have to fill those in. But all of this other data is already here. You just have to review, make sure that it's accurate, and then you would save them, and then they would be enrolled. And this functionality would only apply to agencies that already allow sharing between them. So we don't need any additional consent or anything like that between the agencies or between us and the client. This is all already allowed, but this is kind of to gauge your comfort level with allowing this functionality. And so we do not allow sharing with police departments. So there's one police department in HMIS because they receive ESG funding. This would not apply to them. They wouldn't be able to see anything other than their own data. But this is for the other agencies that do have that data sharing. So I would like to give everyone the opportunity to either unmute themselves and provide some feedback, or put some comments in the chat. So I'll wait a minute.
Hi, this is Gina from Mary Shelter. So my question is just because we're in the database, does that mean we'll automatically be able to share with everyone in it?
Yes, that was signed when you were first set up in HMIS.
Okay. I've only found one of our residents had already previously been entered since I've been entering them in.
Well, that means that you're providing us with a client base that we didn't currently have access to, so thanks. But you target RISE, so that may be part of that reason too, is there's so few RISE clients in HMIS, and the data sharing for them is different also because they're not 18.
Awesome, okay, thank you.
Any other thoughts on this functionality?
Cassie, I'm fine with it. I've seen this happen. You know, it was happening between programs before, and that was really helpful. So from agency to agency, I think that's also very helpful.
Okay.
Connor.
That's where you're wrong, Connor. So Connor thinks it's a good idea. HMIS doesn't have to be Fort Knox. Any other thoughts on this? I'll also do a little poll to give everybody an option to anonymously vote, but anybody else have anything they want to bring up? While I wait, I'll start the poll to let you all give your feedback.
It feels really strange not having Connor having the ability to talk.
Well, he probably does have the ability.
I have the ability. I was sparing you all.
Oh, okay. That's part of the fun of these meetings, is Connor.
Oh, man.
I promise I won't get too impassioned.
So far, we've got a strong positive response for this. So thanks to those of you that are participating. We'll keep it over for, or keep the poll open for one more minute. All right, so it looks like polling is stopped. So everybody said yes. So excellent news. All right, we can implement that pretty easily. So we will work on doing that, and then it will be available on HMIS probably within the next couple of weeks, maybe even sooner than that.
So these have to go.
Can you say that again? You kind of cut off at the end. Okay. So now, transitional housing performance reports. So first, I will show you the project level so you can get the feel for what the new report looks like. So we've separated the report into two separate documents. Oh, I just wrote on it. Oh, well. Just for easy viewing and printing. So this The project scores is just going to be a list of the projects within that project type and their scores for each measure. You may notice that we've kind of changed up our color scheme, and the reason for that was to be more friendly to those that may be colorblind. So you can see those that met the threshold versus did not meet a threshold for each project. And then on the far right, the percentage of goals that that project met. Across the top, you can also see the names of the measures as well as the threshold for each one. So we are planning to move forward with this same format for all of the project types. But just to kind of introduce you guys a little bit to what the new layout is. All right, and then the goals and outcomes report. So this report is a project level report. There are no project names on this. This is just to see how transitional projects are performing as a whole. And so this first page is allowing us to see what our scores were over time for transitional housing projects. And again, we mixed up our color scheme to be more colorblind friendly. And so you can see how we're performing over the last 3 times that we've published this data for transitional housing. One thing I did want to point out and maybe talk about with the group is the entries from homelessness. So you can see that we were pretty consistent around 82%. And then in this last reporting period, we went down to 65%. And so I wanted to find out, are the agencies taking less homeless households due to COVID-19? Or is there another reason that the group is aware of that these entries from homelessness have decreased? We got Gina said yes for Mary Shelter, so that makes sense.
Hi, this is Amanda from Colette's Children's Home.
Hi, Amanda.
Hi. So I know for us, we've taken in a few like DV situations because of COVID. Like they're trying to flee a little bit more often right now.
Okay.
So that kind of, I think, has gone up a tiny bit.
Okay, that's good to know, although that would not bring this.
Doesn't, okay, I wasn't sure if that affected that or not.
Yeah, so one of the specifications of this measure is that if they say that they're fleeing DV, then it's considered like a neutral entry, so it's not
Okay.
either
Okay.
helping or
Okay.
hurting this. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Any other transitional housing providers? I'm creeping through the participant list right now. Cassie, what about Mercy House?
I ain't at Mercy House anymore.
Oh my God, I forgot.
Sorry, that's
John
me.
Paul, John Paul.
We don't do transitional housing anymore, so also it's a moot point. Sorry.
Really, you don't have any more transitional housing?
Not in Orange County.
Okay, well. All right, let me keep going. The other one I wanted to bring up, oh, if you just joined, can you please put your agency name in the chat so we know who is participating? The other one I wanted to bring up, you can see overall our performance is really staying consistent, which is good. But the positive increase we've had here is that more clients are increasing their income while they're still enrolled in the project. So that's great news. And I was wondering if any of the agencies have strategies that they're using to to improve this measure, since whatever you're doing is working. While you're thinking, I'm gonna look here. I don't think Grandma's is on. All the people that have increased their income aren't even on this call, guys. All right. Whatever they're doing is working. For those of you that are using the annual assessment report, is that helping you? Could it be improved in any way? This doesn't have to be transitional housing specific. No one's using it? Okay. The other, so I was also wondering for this measure, since we are consistently above the threshold of 10%, if we should increase this threshold a little bit. I was considering maybe up to 12 to 15%. If any of the agencies have thoughts on that. Nobody cares? Everybody's fine with increasing it? Okay. I'm gonna throw out 12%. Anybody unhappy with that? Thank you, Paula. All right. Paula's assigning for the group. All right. Next measure is getting into entries from homelessness. So again, as we're going through this report, we're going to be applying this format to all of the project types. So if there's anything you see, if you see any improvements or any changes that we could make to help you out a little bit more, let us know. But you can see that now moving forward, we will have the project type score, which we have had historically. And then we've added some special populations. Now you can see how chronically homeless clients are doing on this measure, veterans, families, and individuals. And then we also include what our goal is and why, and then there's a little chart kind of giving more information. In this case, it's where clients that are not homeless are entering from. So 100% of chronically homeless are entering from homelessness, which is exactly what it should be. So good job, everyone. I was surprised that the percentage of veterans entering from homelessness was so low. Are transitional housing projects more lenient with veterans and where they're entering from, or is there a reason that this number is lower?
Just spitballing here, but what's the sample size?
It should be, I don't know the number off the top of my head, but it's looking at all heads of households. And you'll see as we kind of go through, the veterans numbers tend to be different for all the measures. So I'm wondering if there's something else going on specific for them. And Casey said, I think it's low, the sample size.
Yeah, so that's 2 people. Thanks, Casey.
Only 4 total. All right. So our next measure is looking at the length of stay in transitional housing projects. So these numbers represent days. And again, the number for veterans is lower, but it is a small sample size. And you can see here on the right, the number of enrollments by the length of stay categories. So the good news is over half of the not veterans, sorry, got them in my brain now. Over half of the enrollments on the in the reporting period were within our threshold, which is less than or equal to 180 days. So that's great. And then there were 378 that were up to a year, so between 181 days and a year, and 155 that stayed for over a year. All right, so then our next goal is looking at unit utilization and making sure that our beds and units are being fully utilized. And it was interesting to me that households without children, the unit utilization was lower than a good percentage lower than households with children. Does anybody have any thoughts on that one? Are you finding that it's more difficult to place households without children in your beds? I'm really not sure why that percentage is lower. His house, do you serve individuals or just families? Alpha. Connor, have you noticed anything with your emergency shelters with households without children being harder to place?
Harder to place. Well, so this is still transitional housing, right?
It is, yeah.
Yeah, we don't really place anyone in transitional housing projects. So,
But your utilization is staying high?
yeah, our utilization is staying high, but we also adjusted our capacity for COVID-19. For instance, the alternative sleeping location used to sleep 40 people, and now it sleeps only 30. So through that line of thinking, maybe they're taking fewer households without children and didn't adjust the capacity in HMIS.
That's what I was wondering about too, but I don't know how many transitional housing projects are like sharing rooms for individuals.
Yeah.
Yeah, so because we're kind of going through that right now as we're working on the emergency shelter PPR, because they do have that room sharing, and so we're trying to get people to adjust their capacity for that. So if any of you have emergency shelters, please let us know. Oh, also for unit utilization, this chart is showing the number of projects that fall into each of these categories. So 17 projects are in HUD's normal range for unit utilization, which is great. And then 10 were under 65%. So that means at least the data is showing that they had beds that were not filled in HMIS. So that could be because their capacity that they told us was incorrect, or maybe they aren't entering and exiting clients appropriately. And so it looks like those beds aren't filled when they are. Or it could be the better unit was under development for a certain period of time and not available. But yeah, there's 10 projects that are under 65% and then 5 that are over 105%. And that could be due to clients aren't being exited appropriately. Again, their capacity could be wrong. Those are usually the main reasons. Oh, and just to point out up here, the households with only children is 132%. And the very likely reason for that is a household type issue in the enrollment. If it's showing in HMIS that a child is enrolled on their own when they are not, and they're actually enrolled as part of a family, that would make this percentage high. This next goal is looking at stayers with increased income. So again, this is a smaller universe of clients because the clients have to be enrolled for at least a year before they can even be included in this measure, and they have to still be active in the project at the end of the reporting period. So that's why we only have measures for family and individuals, not veterans or chronically homeless, because there were no clients that met that specification. And on the right side here, you can see specifically the client's income status as of the end of the reporting period. So the 39% increase is reflected as our score, since we're looking at those that increase their income, but we also had 30% that maintained their income. So that means from enrollment to at least a year after their stay in your project, they have kept the income that they came in with, which is great. And then we had a 26% decrease. And it's the same idea for adults that increase their income as of project exit, but there is no length of stay requirement. So this is looking at any clients that exited during the reporting period and whether or not their income increased between entry and exit. And you can see by project type, as well as special population, how each is doing. Veterans is 0%, but that was probably like one person. And then you can see here 44% increased and 42% maintained. So that's great also, that even more clients were able to maintain their income and exit. Question from Stephanie. Are any of the income measures under consideration to change because of COVID-19? We are not planning on decreasing any thresholds because we still have to submit our reports to HUD, and they have not said that they're going to allow that. But we are aware of, the struggle that everyone has been under this year. And what was I going to say? Oh, the other thing was for rapid rehousing and permanent supportive housing, when we actually started talking about the performance reports with them, the COC ad hoc that was looking at that actually wants us to work on increasing a couple of measures for this next upcoming reporting period, because we've been so consistently meeting those measures. And I think one of them was income. So that's going to be coming up in the next few months, just so you're aware, and we can talk about it more when we get to that project type. Sorry, Stephanie. And I will just say HUD is aware also of, you know, what's going on. So I'm sure they will be a little more understanding of the performance stuff. And this might also come into play when we start looking at some of the emergency shelters that came on specifically for COVID, and they are aware of that. So we just want to keep looking at the data to make sure that, you know, we're moving in the right direction and we're aware of what's going on and we can course correct as needed. But don't beat yourself up too hard, you guys. Okay, so exits to successful housing situations. So this is enrollments that exited during the reporting period that exited to permanent housing. And on the right side here, you can see for those that aren't exiting to permanent housing, where are they going? Unfortunately, the most common exit is to a homeless situation. So that means they're either returning to the streets or an emergency shelter or transitional housing or a safe haven. Followed by temporary situations. So this is like a hotel motel, or they're staying with their friends or family temporarily. And then we have missing. Oh, family and friends are actually their own category here. So temporary is more like a hotel or an institutional setting. So that could be like jail, substance abuse, a hospital, that kind of thing. And one thing I did want to bring up is the families have the highest exits to permanent housing. And if you look back at the length of stay, they also have the longest length of stay, or a higher length of stay than individuals at least. And for those of you that serve families, I'm wondering if you have any thoughts on that. Does a family require a longer length of stay in order to be placed in permanent housing, or if you know of something else going on?
Do you think maybe it's like just the sheer cost of like housing a family over an individual? And I'm sorry if you hear my dogs whining in the background. You know, it takes a lot. You know, an individual can go to like a room for rent, and that can be a permanent situation, whereas like a whole family would need, you know, I mean, even though we would be able to maybe put them into a situation that might not be the most stable situation for them, you know, to move forward with paying such a significant rent for like a 2 or 3 bedroom apartment. I don't know. Just a thought.
For those of you with transitional housing, are you placing households, or where are you placing households from that are exiting to permanent housing? Is it in their own unit? Is it with other friends or family? Is it rooms, but they're sharing with other people? Alpha says their own unit or renting with family. Okay.
For families, often obviously there are children, and often childcare. So yeah, I think in terms of it's harder to place family, or it takes longer often for families because there's more pieces to the puzzle, for lack of a better phrase. Which is not to say individuals don't have their issues too, but families, especially if they have younger children, the whole daycare and schooling and all of those issues can be fairly challenging.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, I agree. Like, I know that especially with COVID, sometimes it takes a lot longer to get the childcare situated.
Okay.
We're finding that. And so then once they are, then they can finally do, you know, other things. And then that kind of adds to the stay a little bit longer too.
Okay. Connor said, have we considered looking at exits to permanent housing based on prior living situation? For instance, are the people who are exiting to housing the same people who were not literally homeless at program entry? We could look at that. We just have to figure out where to put it. But yes, that is something we could consider also, since if they weren't homeless to begin with, it's possible that they could go back to wherever they were before, which could be an argument for better diversion prior to entry also.
Yeah, it would indicate that we're not using our slender resources wisely.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, we can kind of look at that and see if that's kind of making an impact. All right. And our last goal is looking at returns to homelessness. So this is looking at clients that exited the transitional housing project to a permanent housing destination and then later returned to the homeless system in HMIS. This is another measure that we are consistently done well with. But you can see that that veteran percentage is high again, and that's probably like 1 or 2 clients also. And in our little charts, you can see where they're returning to. So the majority of them are returning to emergency shelter, or half of them are returning to emergency shelter, followed by street outreach. So they are actually returning to homelessness. Most of them are not going straight to rapid rehousing or PSH. And then to see where their initial exit was to, the majority are exiting to some place that they own or rent without a subsidy. So that is good news, because the purpose of transitional housing is to exit people to housing outside of the homeless system. So it's great that so many are able to do that. Followed by exiting to family or friends permanently. So that's also great. And then we have owned or rental with subsidy, and then exits to permanent supportive housing or other permanent housing. And I know the veterans number is very small in terms of the universe size, but I wanted to ask if there are any extra burdens or barriers that you have to face or overcome with the veterans that could be having an impact on this data, or is it just happen to be because of the small universe that it, you know, it is what it is? Or if anybody has experience working with veterans, I know that Angie has a ton of experience working with veterans, but how that's impacting this process. Question: if a family is exiting to living with family but will be renting, what would the appropriate exit destination be? That would be staying or living with family permanently. So, and make sure you're choosing the permanent option, because there is one that also says temporary. And that would not be considered a permanent housing destination. So it sounds like working with veterans is a breeze. Okay, so I wanted to take a little bit of time. So we will be ending early, so that's great news. You guys can get some time back. But since we are still going to be doing this meeting as a Zoom meeting for the foreseeable future, I wanted to get some feedback from all of you, or any thoughts on, are there topics that we should plan to cover in the next few months? Are there different formats that you want to look at for this meeting? What would be beneficial to you all?
I like the format. I would be really interested to know, not right now, but even if we could just open up a conversation about how other agencies are leveraging their data to support people in working remotely. Because I think that's a big thing going on right now for all of us, and I'm sure that we're all responding to it in different ways.
Okay, do you have any like examples that we should be focusing on, or you just want to hear what everyone's doing?
Give me a minute and I can cook up a couple examples. I don't know if I'm sitting on any ready to go.
Okay. Other burning topics or ideas for future meetings? It is nice to have this format, because then I can show things in HMIS like we did at the beginning, to help with the conversation. So if there's things in that arena too that you want to talk about, we can consider that either for this meeting or the user meeting, if depending on what it is.
I feel really rusty. Like, I feel like this meeting hasn't happened in so long. I really like this new report, though. I like the way it looks.
Yeah, we were trying to, thank you. We were trying to incorporate some of the feedback we've been getting and also like streamline it. So I'm glad you like it.
This might be the tiniest bit off topic, but we noticed there were some recent glitches system-wide with Clarity regarding chronic homelessness. And we were wondering if that might affect long-term data, or what if there's a plan that might get us around that affecting long-term data quality.
I believe we are already working with BitFocus on that. I can double check, but it should not be a long-term effect that we're aware of. It sounds like it's temporary unless there's, you know, a change in like calculation that they haven't shared with us. So it shouldn't be long-term. And if it does change things, then we can let you know. It would probably be the user meeting where we would announce that, since that's kind of a wider group, but it should not be long-term.
Okay, thank you.
Have you already entered a ticket about that?
Not yet. We were waiting to see if there would be some resolve at the BitFocus level, because we noticed it across systems, not just in OC.
Yeah. If you could send 1 or 2 clients as an example, just to make sure that it's on our radar. I'm pretty sure I've seen it, but you know, if you have something specific that they may or may not already be working on, it would be good to have it.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Casey says we do have a ticket in regarding the program details report. So if that's your issue, then that is probably already being worked on. But if it's somewhere else, then you should probably put in a ticket.
That's exactly it.
Okay.
We were just wondering if there would be cascading effects throughout the system, and it sounds like it's not. So thank you.
Any other items that you would like to see us work on during this time? Going back to the chronically homeless, Casey also said, it sounds like it is just the program details report that's having the issues, and the APR is calculating correctly. If you want to enter a ticket so I can add it to my BitFocus ticket, feel free. Stephanie says, I think continued discussions on performance reporting and the general direction we're heading because of COVID-19, even if it's no change, would be beneficial, similar to today, as well as the challenges other agencies are facing. So maybe like a COVID support group. Stephanie says, or sorry, Gina says our scores were low and we're not sure why. Yes, we can talk about this, Gina. If you can put in a ticket, and we can schedule something with you to go over your scores. We do also have a data and reporting document that kind of outlines how these measures are being calculated, so that might help also, and we can send that to you. Connor, did you think of examples?
I've got one written down, but I'll email you a few. I know there's a few more deep in my brain. I think my brain's just a bit mushy right now.
Okay. All right, I'll just give it 1 more minute for anybody that's putting information in the chat, any ideas for future topics. The next meeting is scheduled for January 14th. It'll still be 1:30 to 3 on Zoom. I will send out an email with some minutes from today's meeting, and we'll post the meeting minutes, the recording, and the reports, obviously, on our website for your easy access. And Stephanie asks, when is the next rapid rehousing report published? Let me look really quick. Oh, this is the wrong one. Hold on. Rapid rehousing will be May, because the rapid rehousing was actually the last one we did prior to COVID really taking over. So rapid rehousing will be May. January will be emergency. February will be street outreach. March will be prevention. And PSH and OPH will be April. Any news on the NOFA? Nope. Karen, our CEO, is developing a conspiracy theory that they're going to release it right before Christmas, just as the worst gift ever. But no, there's been no news. I'm kind of hoping that it's going to be like an automatic referral or something, but yeah, we haven't heard anything. James, don't put that energy in the world. I'm sorry. All right, so it looks like the questions and comments have slowed down. So thank you guys for attending. I know you're all really busy and it's kind of a crazy time. So thanks for taking some time to talk with us today. If you haven't already, please put your agency name in the chat box, and we will talk to you next month. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, y'all.
Thanks.